Oh, I'm so hyped. I'm hyped for this sound check. I'm hyped that you joined me tonight. I'm hyped that I've got this new information. Oh, you guys, things are coming together in Archaics. We are weaving a tapestry with all of these independent threads. New chart has been posted on Twitter and in the community. If you want to see the new chart, it's not the only new chart you're going to see tonight, but that's just my little promo chart just to show you basically what we're going to, a little bit of what we're going to cover. So we're going to go through the Nemesis chronology just to go over, just to give people an idea of what we're talking about. Things in Archaic seem to be very complex, but they're not. When we reduce these things to their lowest common denominators, a picture begins to form. You're going to see a clear picture. Hundreds of Archaics presentations are going to make sense to you tonight. It's absolutely amazing. I know this is going to be a rewatched video many times. This is going to be an epic share video for people who really want to understand the inner workings of this massive theory on calendrics that we have put together. So, the 1985 song will be the last thing that we show because I'm going to show stills of the song. I've even read what the songwriter said about his own music. That song has been like a splinter in my mind since somebody introduced that song to me on Twitter or put it in the comments on YouTube and I looked it up. I thank that person in the comment section. But I listened to that song and I watched what was being shown and I couldn't let it go. I kept going. I've listened to that song about 50 times now. I just played it over and over and over. I have analyzed every single sentence of those lyrics. I have gone through what the songwriter himself said about the music. I've gone through the imagery. The last part of this presentation, probably the last 45 minutes to an hour, will be focused on that song because they told us the absolute truth. But if you listen to that song without hearing the information I'm about to present to you, you would never see it. You wouldn't even know what they're really talking about. Finding more and more and more, it's not just movies, but even the music industry has been giving us the business, and there's something going on as to why they can't just outright directly tell us. But this is some really awesome information. And for those who think that Archaics is about doomsaying and that we're all about talking just about the end of the world and there's no hope, you're not going to walk away from this video thinking that. What has been put together now is so amazing. It makes each individual soul absolutely responsible, basically for their own destiny, and how it's written in the code for all of us to either be or not be, and that the fault will always lie with the individual. The separation between the collective and those that are awakening has a cause. We're going to be going through this. Everything is going to make sense about the Phoenix phenomenon by the end of this video. Why it happens, what its purpose is, what it's doing, how it's doing it. I only figured it out by studying Nemesis X. And I've told you from the beginning, they're like brother and sister. But I didn't know just how close I was. So you guys know there's some really bizarre videos in Archaics. We document the things at Charles Fort. Insect larvae encased in the snow in Antarctica, all different species, all different kinds of insects. How'd they get there? How did they get there? Fossilized jellyfish, the whole world flash frozen. How'd they get there? No intermediate life forms, no fossils of an intermediate form. We have so many fossils, and they're from so many different time periods, according to geologists, and yet not one transitional form has ever been found fossilized. How is that? What's going on? I've been on fossils a lot lately and petrification. Got it all figured out now. Dinosaurs and humans walking side by side. It's in the footprints. Dark Ages, Native American traditions, all they're packed full of prehistoric type creatures that they domesticated, they fed on, they befriended. It's all here. It's totem poles, statuary, cutlery, ceramics, and pottery. It's all here. Dated to the Dark Ages period. What happened during the Dark Ages period? You're going to get that answer here today. One single phenomenon answers everything. Every mystery and every anomaly, every enigma of the ancient and modern world is answered in what you're going to see in this video. Yeah, I've been on cloud nine, guys. And you know from all my past presentations, I've never hyped a video and didn't deliver. So I'm going to deliver in this one as well. This is some really profound. It's just profound. It's profound stuff. So Immanuel Velikovsky, he was so close. He was so close. But that uniformitarian poison stopped him from taking that extra cognitive step. He was so close when he wrote Worlds in Collision. He was so close. But uniformitarian model was what he was still operating on because that's how he'd been educated. That's how the whole world has been educated. He just couldn't see past the fact that the things that he was documenting actually happened in history, but not because of what scientists say is actually happening in the sky. He was so close. It's just so crazy. So I'm going to ask you guys right now, and I'm going to answer every one of these by the end of the video, but I'm going to ask you right now, is there an explanation for why the world seems to be unraveling right now? I'm not talking about 30 years ago when things were still normal. Yeah, we had complaints 30 years ago, but 30 years ago wasn't anything like what we're going through right now with the media saturation, the total breakdown of basically domestic and foreign systems, government, politics, economics, morality. All systems are in some type of entropy, advanced state of entropy right now. It wasn't like this 30 years ago. Something happened starting in 2020. It's been unfolding more and more rapidly. And with each passing month, the chaos and the nonsensical phenomena it's almost as if like, what? WTF? 5 minutes later, look at another news deal. WTF? Then you get a phone call from somebody. Hey man, did you hear about what WTF? Yeah, it's at an accelerated pace. Is there an explanation for why the world seems to be unraveling right now? I'm going to tell you yes. Are major events in calendars actually nodal intersects between different habitable dimensions? That's a heavy one there. And I would be real critical of anyone who was to tell me that there was an answer available for that. But I'm going to tell you yes, based off everything that we have found in Archaics, and you're going to understand why. But are major events in calendars actually nodal intersects between different habitable dimensions? I'm telling you yes. Is there a unified field theory available that accounts for all the anomalies and enigmas of the ancient world? I'm going to tell you yes. Is there a single explanation for the sudden appearance of the various different types of humans in history? I'm going to tell you yes. Is there an explanation why entire self-regulating ecosystems, like the unique ones of plants and animals in Australia, marsupials, is there an explanation, why these are found nowhere else in the world except in the islands around Australia? I'm going to tell you yes. Yeah, guys, marsupials aren't like they're proto-mammals. Yeah, marsupials raise their young in pouches that are attached to their body. They're not like mammals. Very different. Very different types of creatures in Australia and New Zealand and the islands in the southern hemisphere in that area. And the only other marsupial is found elsewhere is because men carried him there by ship. It's the opossum. That's how the opossum came to be all over the world. But is there evidence? Is there an explanation as to why they're only there and nowhere else? I'm going to tell you yes. You're going to find out by the end of this video. Is there evidence in archaeology and the historical record of spontaneous complex biological organisms and even human cultural systems appearing ex nihilo in our world? Ex nihilo means without any pre-existing anything. Ex nihilo means out of thin air. Is there any evidence in archaeology and historical records of spontaneous complex biological organisms and even human cultural systems just appearing out of nowhere in the historical record? Even baffling anthropologists, I'm going to tell you absolutely yes. Yes. You've seen the videos in Archaics. Insects rains from a simulated sky. All the different things William Cordes and Charles Fort have documented that has just fallen from a blue sky, biological materials, carbonaceous materials, actual life forms, even fossils raining from the sky. Is there a single unifying mechanism that explains all of the amazing data about the Phoenix phenomenon, the Nemesis X object, the dark satellite, all the weird things that have fallen from the sky, and even our very odd moon? Yeah, the moon is very odd because it completely defies all the uniformitarian laws. All the laws of physics that uniformitarians tell us that spatial bodies are supposed to behave, the moon defies them all. So, is there a unifying mechanism that explains all of this material? I'm going to say yes. Is there a single mechanism that explains the ancient beliefs in portals, in invading demons? Remember the Mayan long count in the end of the 13th Bacton. In the 1,872nd day, 13 Bactons, 13.0.0.0.0. A portal was going to open and demons were going to come out and invade the surface of the world. This is Mayan prophecy. This is at the event called time collapse. So, is there a single mechanism that explains the ancient beliefs in portals, in invading demons, in arrival of angels or gods, in mass disappearances, and even in Exodus traditions? I'm going to tell you yes. Not only am I going to tell you yes, I'm going to show it to you today. Is there a single phenomenon that explains repetitive timelines, cross-calendrical parallels, syncs, coincidences, deja vu, Mandela effect, and palindromic sequences of events that we've shown here in Archaics many, many times? Even retrocausality? I'm going to tell you yes. I'm going to tell you yes. Is there an explanation as to why some souls are waking up to these unusual aspects of our world while the majority are moored to the phenomenon? They're moored to phenomena, the world of phenomena, and are unable to comprehend beyond their programming. Is there an explanation? Yes. I'm going to tell you that that the answer to every question I just posed is yes, but I'm even going to go further. Not only are all of these answered in the affirmative, but it is the same phenomenon that unifies them all. Every single one of them. This is the subject matter. That's my intro. This is the subject matter of this video here. This is going to be some deep stuff. You guys are going to hear about a whole new theoretical physics theory that we've never discussed before. 960. Well, we're just a few from that G. We'll have a G in a couple minutes. This coffee is so good. Here's one of my new shirts. I got a whole bunch of new shirts. One who is properly informed is not easily deceived. Oh yeah, you know it's deep. I had to get my truck tires out. I got my big cup. I'm a third the way through The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. You guys got that coming pretty soon. All right, we're getting real close to 1,000. Oh, Immanuel Velikovsky, so close. So we're going to really quick share my screen. Why am I? Oh, there it is. All right. So you guys have seen many of the charts concerning the Nemesis X history. You've seen many of them. The next appearance of Nemesis X is in 2046. We'll show that here in a minute. But the number 2040, the date 2046 is by many species of analysis. I know that some of you follow Douglas Vogt. I know he's passed away. Diehold Foundation. Douglas Vogt had dedicated his life to knowing the truth. Now, I do have a little problem with how he got his 2046 date, even though 2046 is a nail on the head. He has basically used biblical gematria of the Diehold Foundation, Douglas Vogt. He used biblical gematria to derive the 2046 date. But his Diehold Foundation is all about pole shift phenomena and a 12,068 year cycle. I totally disagree with that analysis. I also disagree with the fact that he never linked the 2046 date directly to the 12,068 cycle. There's no way to link it. We have no data, no records whatsoever of anything that happened, 10,000 years ago. So, or 10,000 years BC. But anyway, he did publish in 2007 the date 2046. I don't know where he got it. The very first time I had published 2046 was in 2004 in a fold-out chart that went viral online. It was released by a teacher at my prison. And later that year, Nature magazine, one of the most prestigious magazines around, had published an article, and I still have that article today. I've showed it on my channel. And in that article, I show that Nature magazine felt it was important because of a new viral theory all over the internet about a comet hitting North America in 2046. That is precisely what I had on that chart. And I had the 2046 date before I ever even knew about the Nemesis X deal. I got it from calendrics and calendrical isometrics. You guys know, all my Archaix veterans know the method that I employ when I study history. And that method showed me that 2046 was extremely terrible for North America. Now, aside from all that, we know that David Davidson had published this in 1924. He doesn't know why. He doesn't know anything about the Nemesis X object, but he published that there was an orbital chronology embedded within the rectilinear measurements of the Great Pyramid, and he published that this timeline's final year that's encoded in the Great Pyramid was the year 2045. Right there. There's 2045. This is the last year of engineer David Davidson's timeline. So there's many ways we've got to this date. The discovery of 2046 was one. The discovery of the Nemesis X returning. I'm going to show you exactly how we know it's 2046 that Nemesis X returned. It's not just something I'm throwing out there. I'm going to show you how you can verify yourself. So here's a chart showing that in the 2046th year of the old world's calendar, Sodom and Gomorrah were completely destroyed in 2046 Anno Mundi. This is the old world's calendar. Sodom and Gomorrah were totally destroyed in 2046 of the old world's calendar. In 2046 of today's calendar, Anno Domini, year of the Lord, is the return of Nemesis X. This is what it looks like as a calendar, like a yin-yang. So over the years, I've done different Nemesis X charts. This is from 2010. It's kind of old. Some of these are blurry. I got to redo the charts, but I actually did a chart today. You're about to see it. These are all Nemesis X. None of these dates have ever changed. They don't need to, because Nemesis X has a full cycle of 792 years. With a 60, it has 60 years that it's literally here for 60 years. And then it's gone for 732 years. And this pattern is unbroken for almost 6,000 years, as I'm going to show. These are all old charts. I'm just zipping through them because nothing's changed on these charts. They're just primitive charts, pen and ink I did in prison. These charts are from 2010. There's David Davidson's. Here's a pretty good chart. You can see it pretty clear, but this is like 2007. This is an old chart too. This is a Mayan long count chart. Chart showing how the Mayan arithmetic works, showing that 2012. This chart right here this chart here was 10 years before 2012. I have a published book. It was published in 2011, showing that 2012 was not the end of the Mayan long count. The Mayan long count actually ends. The 13th Bacton ends in 2046. Right here, I have a little note. 2046 AD, time collapses, ending 13th Bacton and 13th Empire. Ephraim of Israel is Empire of Adoption, USA. His entire Empire of Adoption is in eschatology. It's the last days empire that adopts all peoples. You have to understand, a lot of empires didn't do that. They enslaved peoples, or they had their own citizens. Had rights, privileges, and immunities, and others in their empire did not. So let's see. 13 Bacton ends the United States, which was started with 13 British colonies. The 13 is the number of America, modeled after the 13 clans of the Maya. In the Mayan long count is a calendar that measures, it's a countdown of the 13 heavens. Each Bacton represents one of the 13 heavens. At the end of the Mayan long count, which is 1,872,000 days divided by 13 for a Bacton of 144,000 days. When that time period ends, and it does in 2046, the period of the 13 heavens is over, and it begins the period of the 13 hells. This is in Mayan prophecy. All right, let's see. Again, I'm just doing an overview. None of this. We're actually going to go through the Nemesis X deals here in a minute, so you guys can understand this super chart that I've got. You haven't seen it yet. I did post the Nemesis X chart, the new one today, on Twitter and in the community. But the super chart that I'm about to pull out is you have not seen it. No one's ever seen it. So this is all, again, just different ways of looking at the Nemesis X history and all the events that happened during those years. Again, here's a chart showing 2046 Nemesis X. Some pretty interesting stuff. But this isn't really I'm not trying to get deep off into Nemesis X. We're going to do some Nemesis X videos to catch people up, because we got a lot of new data too to add to it. This is the official Archaics chronology going back. All these black spheres you see here, those are Nemesis X visitations that have historical records that we know what happened on those dates. Now we need to add one. There's one missing. Now here's the red ones on the top. This is all Phoenix phenomenon dates, and we're missing a couple of those. This chart needs to be updated. Again, Nemesis X showing a perfect chronology. You guys know Archaics chronology begins with the Anunnaki Ner calendar, 5239 BC. So 5239 BC, counting exactly 3,672 years, gives us the year 1567, which in the historical record is the Battle of Megiddo, or better known as Armageddon. Counting the exact number of years, 3,672 from the beginning of the Anunnaki timeline that led us to the Battle of Megiddo, gets us another 3,672 years into the future to 2106 AD, the return of the chief cornerstone at the Battle of Armageddon. It's just showing you, this is just a real simple chart showing you how absolutely perfect the calendrics are. And you know, this is 7,344 years. And many of you have seen my Great Pyramid research, and you know that the apothegm of the Great Pyramid is 7,344 inches. And that in the 1800s, the men that were researching the pyramid concluded that the pyramid speaks in inches, and that the inch is a solar unit attached to the megalithic yard, and that the inches, feet, yards, and mile are not new, but are very, very ancient units of measurement. Here's another Nemesis X chart. I'm just going through these real fast. These aren't really that important. Also, we have our Mayan. We got all these. Let me get all these out the way. We have our Mayan calendar. Here's the another way of looking at the Bactans, the Sumerian and the Vedic time periods, all of them synchronizing, showing all these ancient calendars synchronized to end at 2239 BC, the Great Flood. And here it is in our time period, they're all synchronizing again. But this time they end at 2046. This is all covered in many Archaics videos. All this stuff is already covered. I'm just showing it again. This is another way of looking at the Mayan long count, ending in 2046, how the Bactans work, showing how the Great Pyramid encodes the Mayan long count. And we've seen that in the chronometry as well. I've got a video showing the chronometry of the Great Pyramid. It actually shows 3113 BC as a begin date and 2046 as an end date. All right. Here's another Mayan long count showing how it works, how all the Bactans work. So 2046 is pretty important by many different species of analysis. And for the longest time, you have to understand, I have to be forgiven too, not just Immanuel Velikovsky, but in the presentation of information, we outgrow former systems that are no longer working for us, because we have taken the cognitive steps necessary to walk away from paradigms that are not true. And when we try to understand the Phoenix appearances every 138 years and the Nemesis X appearances every 792 years, we try to fit what is chronologically sound into a framework of the uniformitarian model. So we're forced to try and deal with things that don't make sense. So we come up with new ideas and new theories, and I'm guilty of that as well. One of the major thresholds that I've never been able to get past, which makes me believe that we live in some type of simulated environment, a computer program of sorts, is the fact that the Phoenix has appeared unbroken every 138 years, and it's very well documented. Nemesis X has a periodicity of 792 years, with 732 years far away, not here, in 60 years just hanging in the sky. So with these, how is it possible for them to have maintained their perfect 138 year and 792 year periodicities when in 713 BC, three different data sets covering three different bodies of information all conclude that the year changed from 360 days to 365.25 days? How is it possible? How do we marry two disparate data sets? Both data sets are absolutely true, verifiable, and with a whole lot of information supporting them. And yet, to marry the two would be impossible, because after 100 years, the Phoenix phenomenon would not be every 138 years. The Nemesis X, after 400 years, the Nemesis X wouldn't be every 792 years. But if we're dealing with something else, and we're not dealing with an heliocentric system, if we're not actually married to uniformitarian principles of a Isaac Newton type solar system, if something else is going on, none of that obtains. There is no reason to think there is a contradiction with the change of the amount of days in the year. 5.25 days were added to every year because of a cataclysm. but it never changed the frequency of appearances of the 138-year Phoenix phenomenon or the 792-year appearances of the Nemesis X object or the 394.5-year appearances of the dark satellite. They have never changed, and they didn't have to. It's always bothered me, but I just wrote it off to simulation. It's a simulation. All timelines can coexist, and they can, because they're entirely subjective and personal. But now we have an answer for it, as we'll get to. Thank you, Bradley Long, and everyone else. I just can't keep up with the chat. I'm in my zone. So I can be forgiven too for the dual ecliptics model, because in the uniformitarian model that is given to us to work with, the phenomena has always been best explained as two ecliptics. It's always been best explained as two ecliptics. And it still unfolds that way, but it's not ecliptics of suns. I'm going to show you. So we've been given clues. We just weren't really paying attention. Even Star Trek showed us the two ecliptic model. Look at the Sigma Draconis system. They even get clever with the names. Alpha Draconis. This is Sigma Draconis. So I have various models here showing how binary ecliptics would work in a uniformitarian model. And like I said, all of this are just attempts to understand the data we have, but people just don't realize how poisonous the uniformitarian model is. Because when you have to think in concepts of stars and planets and moons and all that, when you have to think into those concepts, you have to take the data that you know to be true, that can be verified, and try to force fit it into a model that's untrue. But when you ignore the uniformitarian model, something beautiful happens. It's what you're going to see in this video. These are all pen and ink attempts of me trying to explain the Phoenix data, the Nemesis X data, and what we know about our world based upon the very models that we have been educated to believe are true. You can see this line right here, this big line here, where all these other timelines start. It's 2046. 2046. Even 15, 16, 17 years ago, when I drew this chart right here, 2046 was already there. But you can see my information and my theories mature as I continue to research. I thought it was an asteroid impact. In the calendrics, I have massive destruction for 2046, but I had it as an asteroid impact. I had it as a comet impact. I had all kinds of things. So we've got some pretty interesting. You can see other models that borrow. This is still an attempt through the lens of uniformitarianism to show something that's actually occurring. What's actually occurring is amazing. It's amazing. You guys know I got a new chart. I just drew this new chart. This is my new chart, my most recent one on the Nemesis binary. There's Phoenix 2040. Right up there. Here's Nemesis X 2046, Dark Satellite 2052. So yeah, I'm done showing those right now. I don't think I need to see any more of that. So remember, it's a tenet of Archaics that we're not moving. We're not moving, guys. Use the evidence of your senses. You're not moving. There are too many things in this world that should have toppled over. There are rocking stones that are multiple tons. That all it would take is just a little tiny tremor of the earth to knock the whole stones down. They're all over the world, guys. These things have not collapsed and fallen at all. Yeah, it's Our world is not, all movement is in the sky. I tell you all the time, the sky lies. Phenomena, materials fall from the sky. Fossils, carbonaceous materials, living organisms, all different species fall from the sky. It's been recorded over and over and over and over. Star jelly falls from the sky. Oh, yeah. Some of you new to my channel have no idea what I'm talking about, but it is very well documented. You think you're looking at fallen stars, meteorites, bolides. When you go to those areas, you find nothing but star jelly all over the ground. That's right. It's really interesting. Really interesting. So let me take that off. I got a few of these to remove. A few of those to remove before I show you this amazing. Here's the new chart. I told you it was an X. This is the new chart that I told you was an X and in the YouTube community. So, really quick, we're going to do some videos as a refresher for a lot of people because we have new data on Nemesis X. But here's basically what's already been published all through the Archaics in my published books and on my posts and in Archaics videos. This chart pretty much epitomizes what's already known. Here it is right here. The Nemesis X chronology in the historical record begins in 3499. But we don't really have anything for that date. That date is alluded to simply because it's 60 years before 1/3 of the human race was wiped out. We've got all the references, Book of Jasher, all the different texts that talk about it, the Jewish Hadaroth texts that go into detail about this cataclysm, what happened, how Enoch first appeared at this time, and in the Sumerian records, how it was exactly 432,000 shars before the flood, which is 1,200 years, and 1,200 years before the Great Flood of 2239 BC is precisely 3439 BC. When Enki appears with the first Anuna. It's during the 60-year period of the Nemesis X object. It's the first appearance of Nemesis X in the historical record. Nemesis X wipes out 1/3 of humanity, but it brings a new race. It's a whole new race here. It's the Anuna. And the Anuna brings civilization. And they're regarded as heroes. They're regarded as gods. They're regarded to the people who just got wiped out and their infrastructure is gone. The Anuna appear. They're bearded. They're called dragon-faced because of their beards, and they're venerated. They're tall, but they're humans. They're a new type of humans. And they come in and they bring civilization. And just like anthropologists know, the 35th century BC is an anomaly because it explodes with urbanization, canal works, mariner guilds, armies, walled cities, huge population expansion. All this starts in the 35th century BC. That's when this happened right here. It's a repopulation. This is during the 60 years that Nemesis X was here. It arrived in 3499. It didn't depart till 3439, and it was gone for 732 years. So you're looking right here at the first box. That's the first 60-year period. Now, this 60-year period is so convincing. I'm going to show you that I used to believe that it must mean that Nemesis X is a super construction and that Nemesis X is actually like a capital ship. How else could it just stay in the sky for 60 years? especially when the actual legends and traditions attached to this period is that there was an exchange of men and materials, that for a 60-year period the gods could go back and forth like Jacob's ladder. So I didn't understand at that time, because I had not already uncovered all this phenomena. What I'm going to reveal to you in this video makes sense of all of it now. But because I'm still thinking in uniformitarian principles and in suns and stars and planets, and I'm thinking of space, I translated their ability to do that for 60 years. It must be some type of ship. I was wrong. This red oval down here is the 60-year period. This red oval. The next one right here is 60 years. It's 732 years later, making 792-year periodicity. Then 732 years later is another 60 years. 732 years later is another 60 years. It is unbroken. This was all dated by, I didn't date any of this. I didn't date 3439 BC. I didn't date 3499 BC. I sure as hell didn't date all these other events right here. And yet, the very next time that we have a 60-year window, better pay attention. The very next time a 60-year window opens up is 2046 to 2106. Return of the Chief Cornerstone. That's the next 60-year window. You can't make this stuff up. I couldn't even fudge this to create that. Let me show you. So 732 years later, we have, oh, wait a minute. I need to tell you about the 60 years first. Oh, yeah. Let me tell you about the 60 years. So these little red dots are 60-year periods. And this is a 60-year period you see right here. 60 years between 3499 and 3439 when Enki or Enoch appears. This is a 60-year period. Now, what else happened at this time period in history? During this first appearance of Nemesis X in historical record is when the Sumerian and the Chinese civilizations both appeared. Both employed a 60-base sexagesimal calendar and arithmetic. 60 was the core base number in the arithmetic of the ancient Chinese and Sumerians. This is where we got our sexagesimal mathematics. So the Ubaid Neolithic culture suddenly catapulted into sophisticated urban centers of high development. This is everywhere in the archaeological and anthropological records. I'm not making any of this up, but it's already covered in Archaics videos. This is just an overview so we can get to the point. Chinese historian Dr. Herbert Chatley notes that the 60-year period venerated in early China found its origin in the era of 2637 BC. By saying in the era, that's a direct quote, in the era of 2637 BC, then he's giving us an approximate. But what does our chart show us? This Chinese scholar, Chinese historian of Chinese antiquities, is telling us that the 60-year period began here. He said 2637 BC, the era of, it is a scientific bullseye. When you're dealing with 5,000 years of history and you give an approximate, but it's a definite number, 2637, but the true number is 2647, it's a scientific bullseye. This is what he's saying, and that is precisely the next visitation of the Nemesis X object. It's right here. 2707 to 2647, the Anuna vanish before 2653 BC, when the Phoenix vapor canopy appears. This is 408 years before the flood. So it was this period that identified strangers as the serpent people or the dragon-faced, though this does not mean that they were actually reptilian. Also, the Mongols, the Manchurians, and the Tartars of Asia all employed a 60-year calendar. So did the ancient Maya. They broke their 60-year calendar into three 20-year periods, just like the Toltecs did. Plutarch wrote that the number 60 is the first of measures for such persons as concern themselves with the heavenly bodies. The early Egyptians represented the number 60 in the 60-year period as a crocodile, a reptile. The crocodile to the Egyptians was a calendar symbol, similar to how in ancient Asia the turtle was a calendar symbol, also in ancient America. Both of them are reptiles. For all intents and purposes, a dragon is a reptile. So, in an epically huge, well-researched book, this guy is now in prison, but his book is fantastic. It's called The Holy Tablets, and he goes way deeper than Zecharia Sitchin and even corrects a lot of Sitchin's mistakes. In The Holy Tablets, which is as big as a Bible, I forgot this guy's name. I think it's Dr. Malachi York. I think it's him. He's back in prison. Or he went to prison. He's still in prison. But before he went to prison, he wrote this book, The Holy Tablets. It's huge. It's like a Bible. And in there, he translates a whole bunch of academic cuneiform. He gives whole passages to whole tablets. And in there, he has a specific reference that the Anuna are confined to Nibiru. Same thing. Nemesis and Nibiru are the same thing. But the Anuna are confined to Nibiru and only able to come to Earth during a 60-year window. He published this not knowing a damn thing about the Nemesis X chronology or the Nibiru chronology that I have reconstructed based off the historical record, and not the mistake of Berosus that was copied by Zecharia Sitchin, showing that Ashar was 3,600 years. After correcting that mistake, I just went by the historical record and what they left behind to discover the 792-year period. Dr. Malachi York and the Holy Tablets nailed it. The Anuna can only come here and leave during a 60-year window. So, Robert Temple, in The Serious Mystery, found that the Celts, the Greeks, and ancient Chinese and Egyptians all highly regarded a 60-year period in antiquity. He also learned from an old obscure book from the year 1827, written by George Higgins. I've showed you that book on my channel, titled The Celtic Druids. Robert Temple noted that Stonehenge and other British stone circles encoded a 60-year period. You know what Stonehenge also shows? Just like I showed, it was video 2 weeks ago. I showed you the carving of the dagger on Stonehenge. Yeah, that's the Nemesis X object. It looks identical to the object that appeared over Nuremberg in 1531. Big old black spear in the sky. So, knowing nothing about the Nemesis X chronology, Robert Temple's independent research uncovered that the 60-year period represented to the ancients the time span of contact with amphibian aliens. Do I agree with Robert Temple? No. Do I agree with the assessment there's a 60-year period and that 60-year period is contact with another world? Absolutely. Absolutely. The associations of the turtle, the crocodile, the amphibians, and reptiles are all because of what that world contains, that our world does not until they come in contact. Oh, this is going to get deep. This is going to get deep. So, the 60-year period is the contact period. between what I'm going to call the terrasphere, Earth, Terra, the terrasphere, and Nemesis X. There is a contact period of 60 years. That window opens every 732 years. As we'll see. All right. My friends, we are not done. So, with the latest Phoenix research and combined with the Nemesis X research, we find out that there was a huge Phoenix cataclysm 408 years before the Great Flood of Noah. The Anuna left. They made their exodus. Now, for those of you new to my channel, years ago, I showed the different classes of history. During this period, the Anuna were here, 792 years, is called the contact period. It's also called the Technolithic period. Once the Anuna are gone, there's a 408-year period to the Great Flood called the Abandonment and Shock period. This is when different cultures of people were making giant sky-facing images to face the sky to try to induce the Anuna to return. Then the Great Flood happened in 2239 BC, caused by the Typhon, the Phoenix. So, after the Great Flood, in the year 1915 BC, the Nemesis X object returns and stays till 60 years to 1855 BC. In 1915 BC, as we've documented in Chronicon, a sky dragon appears. The Babylonians call it Tiamat. It appeared as a great blackness swallowing the stars. It's also mentioned in the Ramayana. Now, in the 16th, remember, it's the 16th year. In the 16th year of the 60 years of the Nemesis X object, the Babel cataclysm divided the languages of men. Think about that. The story of the great division of mankind, the creation of all new languages so they couldn't get together to finish an architectural project, happened during, not only was it during a 60-year contact period with Nemesis X, but it was the 16th year of that contact period, which is going to be important later on, right here on this chart. During this 60 years of the Nemesis X, the Sumerian civilization completely vanished. It was replaced with the Amuru. We've got many videos about the Amuru in Archaics. We're not going there right now. This is just an overview. The next time the Nemesis X appears, 732 years later, is in 1123 to 1063 BC. China is depopulated. The mandate of heaven changes. There's all kinds of different traditions that are attached to this period. It's very interesting that it's China again, because China started our Nemesis X history here. We'll get to the bottom in a minute. I'll explain the bottom in a minute. I'm just going through the top. So 732 years later, Nemesis appears again. In the exact year that Alexander of Macedon becomes Alexander the Great, Babylon has fallen. The Macedonians are now supreme. They have taken over the Near East. They even invade India. It is 331 BC, and Alexander is sitting on the throne. There is also, Alexander's men also saw flames raining from the sky. It actually scared them from going any further into India. Babylon fell and the moon grew dark, but it wasn't an eclipse. It was just inexplicable. That was in the first year, 331 BC. What's interesting is 60 years later was 271 BC. And in that exact year, the final year of Nemesis X, something caused Venus to vanish in the sky. And that was, you got to understand, guys, Venus, all the ancient American and the Near Eastern temples and sky watchers had Venus almanacs. They religiously followed Venus. It was the brightest object in the sky aside from the moon. And for Venus to vanish but other stars didn't, that would have been very alarming. So 732 years later, we have 462 AD. 462 to 522 AD. We have a 60-year Nemesis X window. And the final year is 522, which happens to be a major epic Phoenix phenomenon date. It's not an ordinary 138-year Phoenix date. It is an epic major cycle, as I'm going to show. So the 60th year of Nemesis X aligns perfectly with 522. There's quakes in Olympia, sky dragons over Britain, celestial war of monsters recorded. It's also the beginning of the Dark Ages. I've showed these before. This massive world-destroying cycle is right here. This world-destroying cycle is perfect. Every single date on here, we have a massive amount of data in Archaics to show what happened. When was the last time one of these cycles began? Each one of them is 1656 years. What does Genesis say? The pre-flood world was 1656 years. What does Rashi say? The world is destroyed every 1656 years. Here's 1656 years, 138 times 12. The beginning of this final 1656 years right here, the beginning, 522 AD. Anno Domini reset, the Dark Ages begun. This is the 60th year of the Nemesis X object. Here's probably a better chart. Here's a more understandable chart. This is the exact same chart, the exact same cycle. It just shows better info. It's a better presentation of the information. There's 522 right there. 522 is the only year in history. You can calculate 10,000 years before 522 AD. You can calculate 10,000 years after 522 AD, and you will never find the Nemesis X object and Phoenix. One of them is 138 years, and the other one is 792 years. You will never find them coalesce again. It is so rare that, in fact, I did a chart on it. Yeah. So rare that I did this chart. I did a bunch of charts like this, but here's Anunnaki Nur cycle, Phoenix cycle, Nemesis X. Here's the Phoenix at 138 years. Here's the Mayan long count dates. Yeah, here it is right here, 522 AD and 522 AD. Here's the Phoenix cycle of 552 years at 522 AD and the Nemesis X at 792 years, 522 AD, the only year in history, backward and forward in time, that these two synced. And it just happens to be the beginning of the Dark Ages, as I show here. At the bottom of the screen, Dark Ages begun. Here's the Dark Ages period here. So 732 years later, we have something really intriguing. Remember, on Stonehenge was that dagger-looking thing that looks just like the black object that appeared in the sky over Nuremberg. It's identical. Well, look at this. The 60 years of Nemesis X begins in 1254 AD to 1314 AD. In 1254 AD, a strange ship appears in the sky. There's a 60-year war. The war is exactly 60 years between England and Scotland. You guys know the story, William Wallace, Braveheart. It's a 60-year war between England and Scotland. Jerusalem, in this year, 1254, Jerusalem falls in the Seventh Crusade. In the 60th year, which is 1314 AD, 1314 AD was the 16th year of the 7 comets over Europe. This is known in European history. It is a period literally called the 7 comets over Europe. And the 7th comet was 1314 AD, and it's described as a great black darkness that covers the stars. It's only later called a comet. In this year, again, China is desolated. Can't make this stuff up. So 732 years after the great black comet over Europe is 2046 AD. in 2046 AD begins the final 60 years to 2106. Return of the Nemesis X. 1/3 of humanity dies. We've already covered this many times. This is what the trumpet judgments are all about. The trumpet judgments are about 1/3 of the sun, 1/3 of the moon, 1/3 of the day, 1/3 of the night, 1/3 of the stars, 1/3 of mankind, 1/3 of the ships of the sea, 1/3 of everything is destroyed. Oh, 1/3 of the animals of the earth. Everything God created in Genesis is reduced by 33%, which leaves 66.6% alive. But 1/3 is removed from the equation in 2046. So time has changed into the Mayan long count. Just like Revelation says that a key is given to an angel of the bottomless pit, and then 200 million locust demon-like things come out and they scour the face of the earth. The same thing is what the Maya said, that at the end, when time collapses at the end of the 13th Bacton, when the 13 heavens collapse and the 13 hells are opened, the demons will come out from a pit, and they'll same exact prophecy. 2106 is the 60th year. It is the return of the chief cornerstone. It is the fulfillment of the prophecy of the Great Pyramid itself, which is a lithic prophecy of the basically every stone represents a soul that has overcome. Just like Revelation Christian mysteries say, to he who overcometh will I give him a white stone with a new name. Will I give him a new raiment? Will I give him a white robe? To he who overcometh will I make him a pillar in the temple of my God. Pillar itself is a code, because the pyramids were never called pyramids until the Greek era. They were originally called the pillars of Iram, like Iram of the columns in ancient Arabian traditions when they were talking about Surid, who built the Great Pyramids. So this is 2106 AD, which is the Exodus of the redeemed. This is the 60th year. What does all this mean? Nemesis X does all these bad things, but it seems to be bringing things to our world as well. In the beginning, 1/3 of humanity was destroyed, but the early Chinese and Sumerian records concerning the Dragon Kings and the 7 kings of the Anunnaki are favorable. They brought civilization, they brought foods and the cereals, the animals, livestock, domestication, cosmetics, the sciences, the arts, clothing, food. They brought 1/3 of the world was destroyed, but immediately they laid an infrastructure down and everybody was allowed to participate. That was the beginning. In the end, it almost looks like the exact same thing. So we're going to go to the bottom here real quick. And remember, this Nemesis X history is not the focus of this video. I'm getting this out of the way before we get to the nuts and bolts. So the bottom of this chart, Paul A. Laviolette, a physicist, a book. He's written several books. One of my favorites is Subquantum Kinetics, because I really like to know the inner workings of reality. Whether he's right or wrong, it's still an amazing book. But he's got a PhD, and he shows that the historic spacing of cosmic ray peaks in the geologic record has gamma ray burst bathing our world 14 times in the last 6,000 years. So he doesn't know what it is. He theorizes there's a brown dwarf very close to us that is just basically exploding. And when it does, our world is saturated with these gamma rays. Well, I believe it's something else, as I'm going to show in this video. But look at the spacing of gamma ray bursts that have saturated our world. And remember that while this guy is really smart, all these dates are in this book right here. This is Earth Under Fire, Paul Laviolette. I don't believe he's with us anymore. These are approximate dates. These were done to the best of his ability, and they are amazing. The first date is 3300 BC as an approximate. Look how close that is to the first appearance of Nemesis X. So he says around 3300 BC, we had our first saturation of gamma radiation. We had another one around 2900 BC, which is almost a dead ringer for a Phoenix phenomenon on the 138-year deal. Then the very next one was a long time after, but it was another bullseye, 1100 BC. Remember, his 1100 BC date is an approximate, and yet he nailed it. Here it is, the 60-year window for Nemesis X. The next one, Archaics veterans, you know that date. The next one, gamma ray burst, was 30 BC. But we know in the Phoenix chronology, 31 BC was an epic. There was all kinds of things that happened in 31 BC. There's 31 BC right there. Total ruin of the Americas, 31 BC. It was the 1656 year on this other cycle. There's 31 BC right there. Next one was around 280 AD. Again, that's an approximate. We do have a Phoenix date at 246, but he got a gamma ray burst around 280. Then he nails it again. 522 AD is when both Phoenix and Nemesis X were in contact with our world in the same year. He nails it. 500 AD. That's during the 60-year window. Nailed it. Not only did he nail it, but these are the Dark Ages. And in the Dark Ages, even he says in his book, it's inexplicable. He doesn't know why, but the highest clustering of gamma ray saturations of our world are during the Dark Ages, are right here. Look at this. We just did 2 major videos on the Dark Ages showing all the anomalies, all the strange things. Now look, a physicist is showing us that the Dark Ages are unlike any other period of history. Yeah, there were gamma ray bursts at other times Nemesis X appeared, but there's nothing at all like what we're seeing here in the Dark Ages. Remember, do you see the last date here? 1030? What did we show in 3 previous videos now? From the Star Fork videos, the long Martin Leakey and I did one called The Long Reset. Then I did a Star Fork video. Then I did a Dark Ages video. What was shown in those 3 videos? That after the year 1030, all of a sudden, all these civilizations throughout Europe started thriving. Urban centers were being developed. Populations were exploding and coming out of the Dark Ages. The churches were primitive, but all of a sudden we started building cathedrals, universities, castles, cities with walls. Everything was happening all at the exact same time. But the century before that, it's radio silence. All these gamma ray bursts right here from the start of the Dark Ages all the way through into the Middle Ages. And then right after 1030, we have an explosion of all kinds of things being done in the field. So the last one, the very last one, and Paul Laviolette even says this in his book, there has not been another one of these anomalous gamma ray bursts that saturated our world in 700 years. He said that. It's in his book. There hasn't been one in 700 years. And the last one that he actually documents is 1300 AD. It is another Nemesis X bullseye. You can't make this stuff up, guys. Just can't make. So the Nemesis X chronology is the result of my own personal research in human antiquities from multiple different sources. This chart is not here to prove anything. It's just an overview of the Archaics research in my published books and all my videos. But to have such corroboration from Paul Laviolette, PhD, is very, very compelling. This gives us another idea about what was really happening in that 500-year period of the Dark Ages. Because this has a lot to do with what I'm going to show you. All right. Let's see. I'm going to keep that list up real quick. Let me go find my next little bomb. Okay, so I'm gonna exit out that. Kim, yeah, I'm gonna check my chat real quick while y'all are there. Oh, now it's time for the next chart. I'm going to talk to you about this. We're going to go into this next chart. So, we're going to be talking about, this is a lot like Land of the Lost. Yeah. Those slee stacks might be real. Remember, Land of the Lost had pyramid-shaped portals and all kinds of stuff. They were trying to tell us something. So, we're going to have to go straight into this next chart. There's really no way to ease off into a topic of this complexity. So I'm going to show you this chart. You're going to have mind explosions as soon as you see the chart. But what I'm about to introduce to you is dimensional membrane theory. It is in theoretical physics. We're talking about something that's beyond our ability to really elucidate about. So we're going to be talking in general concepts about field hybridization and field convergence. We're going to be talking not about worlds in collision of Immanuel Velikovsky. We're going to be talking about dimensions colliding and what actually happens according to some of the best theoretical physicists who have already been contemplating this, but haven't done the Archaics research to actually show from the historical record that this is the answer to all the anomalies of what's been going on. So, Nemesis X and Phoenix chronology document the points of field convergence with the terrasphere. These dates are when worlds collide. An exchange of information, an exchange of life, an exchange of phenomena. During these 60-year windows, we have contact with the master world. What you're looking at on the left is Nemesis X. On the far right is our world, the world you know, the world of phenomena, of sense perception. It is the terrasphere, it's Earth. But during a 60-year convergence period, when Nemesis X is actually converging with the terrasphere, it creates what's known as a tertiary field. A tertiary field, tertiary is it means third field. It means the number 3. So we can say from our point of reference that the terrasphere, Earth, is 1. But when the Nemesis X field comes into contact with ours, there's an overlay. This would be the tertiary field. The tertiary field during the 60-year window is where all the magic happens. The tertiary field is where all the phase transitions, the field interactions, it's where all the anomalies occur. So both Phoenix and Nemesis X are dimensional overlays that exchange information with the terrasphere. So this is how we can account for the collision of 2 separate world dimensions that have their own distinct ecosystems, but they form a tertiary system that remains intact in both systems after the fields separate. From Archaics veterans, we need to apply. This right here is a macro concept. So let's apply it to the micro. In the world of terraspheric phenomena, have we not already gone through all the evidence that the orbs are operating on this exact same principle? Are not the orbs? We've talked about the Bermuda Triangle. We've talked about MH370 that Ashton Forbes has made famous, how the orbs made it disappear. We have talked about how orbs are inside volcanoes right before volcanic activity. Orbs are inside tsunamis. They have been documented inside the funnels of tornadoes. They have also been documented as Foo Fighters. Orbs have been documented and witnessed. There are eyewitness accounts of orb phenomena going on around somebody who vanishes. Vehicles, aircraft, and people, when they're in contact with these orbs, remember what I described. This was like 2 years ago. I described the dimensional envelope. I didn't have another word for it. I now understand it's a tertiary field. At the time, I called it a dimensional envelope. And I described, we have our 1.618, 3.14 physics right here in the terrasphere. But what if something else operating in a different mathematical structuring, what if that field overlaid our current position? There would be a tertiary field, an interference pattern, but it's not even really an interference pattern. It's an overlay. And you can exist in the tertiary field because inside the tertiary field are all the laws, physics constants, biological laws, everything that allows you to exist. But now there's an overlay of the field of different laws, all kinds of different information, but from another source that's not the terrasphere. So when the other source is able to become more real, when you phase into it more and you're less in the terrasphere, it can literally pull you right out of the dimension. And this is what I've described many times as the human abduction phenomenon, as the UFO phenomenon. We're dealing with, I call them dimensional envelopes. It's when two fields overlay and you're caught in the middle field, and then the stronger field is able to pull you right out of the weaker field. This is the way I've always described it, at least 2 years ago in those videos. Well, we're looking at the exact same thing here, except we're not dealing with the small little micro phenomena of the orbs, which act like little range finders. We're now talking about we're talking about macro systems, when worlds collide. So kind of makes you wonder where MasterCard got its symbol, because this is the MasterCard symbol right here. This is exactly the MasterCard symbol. So this tertiary field, not the terrasphere and not the Nemesis X, but the tertiary field is the gate. It's the portal. It's the gate of Yaxakak that's talked about in the Necronomicon. It's the portal. It's the gate. It's the magic door of Kutub. This is the point. This is the point of ingress and egress between worlds. This is the 60-year window when men and materials are exchanged between worlds. This is how this is described. How this becomes a thing. And there's been times in the past when, for whatever reason, there wasn't enough balance. What is Nemesis? The bringer of balance. I'm not making that up. That's the role of the Greek god Nemesis. She became associated with vengeance, but her earliest role was the keeper of the scales, like you see on the third horseman. She was the bringer of balance, and often to create balance, it required vengeance, or what was perceived by the victims as vengeance. But Nemesis is the bringer of balance. In the past, Nemesis actually destroyed the terrasphere, and everything had to start over because for some reason the fields were incompatible. And it basically forced a field neutralization. Now, what am I talking about? A non-convergence that shut down our world. We've already documented this in Archaics. There is no way around the fact that the whole world flash froze, and this is the origin of most of the fossils. You guys know I've got several videos now, 5 or 6 now, on the whole world flash froze. It's called the Medusa effect. From the bottom of the sea levels, jellyfish, on up to the highest mountains, our entire world flash froze. And in the thawing process, as it thawed, that's when the fossilization, the mineralization occurred. And that's why we have such delicate life forms. That's why the fossil record is full of butterfly wings, full of moth wings, full of jellyfish in 3D as if they're still in the water. Why? Because the whole world flash froze. That probably only happened because when you have a field convergence, the stronger field is going to flip the polarity of the weaker field every single time. And that flip is instantaneous. We're not dealing with worlds. Get the uniformitarian BS out of your mind. We are dealing with field mechanics. And when a strong field comes in contact with a weaker field, the weaker field's polarity flips. When the flip occurs, the whole world freezes. Flash frozen. It's a simple concept, but it's just hard to wrap your mind around it because we've been so brainwashed into believing in the uniformitarian models. But two distinct mathematical fields possessing the information that supports, regulates, and perpetuates ecosystems can converge, creating this tertiary field you see right here that allows materials and phenomena to be exchanged in the tertiary field environment. Someone in the terrasphere can wander into the tertiary field part where things are just really different and weird, but they're still habitable, they're still livable. And in the tertiary field, that individual from the terrasphere can move to a point of location that puts them in the Nemesis X field. And when the fields separate, the person that was formerly in the terrasphere is now, for the next 732 years, in the Nemesis X field, because there will be no tertiary fields between. 732-year window. If someone wanted to travel from Earth to Nemesis, the Nemesis plane, they would have to wait for a convergence point to appear. And right now, the next point of contact, when the tertiary field will be created, starts in 2046, and it does not end at 2106. So full field immersion is probably very, very rare when the entire Nemesis field overlays our terrasphere. Most of the time, we just get the tertiary field action. It's only going to be a few times in history when we actually had full field immersion or coalescence. Now, we did have one recently, the Dark Ages. So in the past, the Nemesis plane overlays probably occurred we know they occurred at specific nodal points that we call dates on our calendars that I just showed you on a chart. And that some of these points of contact later produced calendars because ancient people wanted to calculate the next field convergences. Remember in Archaics how many times I've told you how odd it is that all these ancient cataclysms started calendars? And yet the calendars were always ex post facto impositions, always created by the survivors, and the calendars always counted forward. We never could figure out why. Why are you making calendars that count forward? They meticulously wanted, just like Mayan long count was a day count system. They counted down to the day. They wanted to know exactly when the next big field convergence was going to occur. They wanted to know that date. So evidence that the Nemesis plane contact creates tertiary fields that only touch one area of the terrasphere at a time is the sudden appearance of human types that began in one area of the world, as if they suddenly appeared there. Why? Because they did. Also, the marsupial ecosystem is an excellent example of local field convergence that did not affect the rest of the world. The marsupial ecosystem and the plants of the southern hemisphere are unique and complex, and they are not found anywhere else naturally in the world. I said naturally. So the tertiary field is actually a symbiosis between worlds. That's basically what it is. So this entire framework suggests interdimensional interactions are not random, but potentially structured, systemic quantum events with inherent evolutionary potential. When I say evolutionary, I'm only meaning developmental. We don't believe it. I'm not using evolutionary in the natural selection context. But field convergences can correct problems. That's what Nemesis is, the balancer. Field convergences. If the controllers have seen that for 732 years something's not working, they can wait for the next field convergence to introduce new material through the tertiary field in order to correct the situation. Nothing's changed in the Archaics model. We are observed. We are in a confined environment. Nothing has changed. So all this does is add some clarity. Adds quite a bit of clarity, actually. So what is the evidence? Look at this MasterCard deal. Imprint this concept into your mind when you think about the complexities of our world. The evidence of tertiary field transition is everywhere. New life forms have appeared in the world with no trace of pre-existing development. Evolution, natural selection can't account for this. The fossil record does not show transitional forms. It only shows explosions of life. The Cambrian explosion is still a mystery to paleobotany and paleontology. It is still a mystery. It's called the Cambrian explosion because in the Cambrian times, like 500 million years ago, all these life forms just exploded onto the scene. Complex life forms with absolutely no transitional forms. So new life forms appear in this world with no trace of pre-existing development. Why? Because they came from somewhere else. Remember Charles Fort, William Cordes, remember all the Archaics videos you've seen where we show the documents where things fell out of the sky, out of a blue sky, all different types of species of animals, even fossils. And carbonaceous material. What does Phoenix bring? Phoenix doesn't bring life. Phoenix brings dirt. Red mud, red rain, red dirt, and edits. How are these edits possible? The tertiary field. What have we documented in 1902? And there's other people in Archaics Underground that are documenting so much about 1902 that it's becoming overwhelming. We should do some movies about 1902 because in 1902, it's very apparent that the Phoenix created a tertiary field and all kinds of things suddenly appeared in our world. All in the same year. How? Through the tertiary field. Instead of Nemesis X on the left, it would have been the Phoenix. The Phoenix would be on the left. Terraspheres on the right in 1902, and the tertiary field is the 1902 exchange of information between whatever the Phoenix world is and our world. We've got to get the uniformitarian model of planets and solar system and all that crap out of our field. We got to get it out of our field because it was specifically designed to keep us from making these discoveries here. Evidence of tertiary field transition is also geological and geographical evidence of systemic destructions that wiped out all life. If all life was wiped out multiple times in the past, as we can see in the fossil record, then how did the same forms that are in the fossil record get found in our backyards today? I've got whole videos showing fossils of 40 million to 500 million year old creatures that are in my backyard today. No development whatsoever. Therefore, they must be coming from somewhere else. If the polarity gets flipped on our field multiple times to end the experiment here, and then it gets rebooted and starts over with all new life forms, but the new life forms are still based on the old programming, we have our answer. Because evolution and natural selection don't answer anything for us. Any theory that causes more questions than answers is no theory at all. So, evidence of tertiary field transition, the exact same life forms existing after systemic cataclysms that existed prior to the destructions. You can't get around that. The fact that that's a thing basically means that the entire scientific model of history is incorrect. We have to look somewhere else. Also, the sudden appearance of new types of the same life forms as if they were modified or had adapted to entirely different conditions, such as different races of humans, just suddenly appearing. No transitional forms, and no apparent reason for the adaptations, as if for a long period of time that race of people was somewhere else. And 732 years later, when they were introduced into the terrasphere, it was after a long period of development elsewhere. Also, artifacts and architecture that make absolutely no sense under the present field physics, but seem to stem from entirely different environmental conditions, is also evidence of tertiary field transition. Absolute evidence of that. Those 60-year windows, we don't know what the laws of physics are like during those windows and what we can and cannot do. The reason we don't is because right now we are subject 100% to the terrasphere. But what are the laws of physics like in the Nemesis X plane? Because when these two planes converge and create a tertiary field, every geographical area inside the tertiary field is subject to the laws of physics of both planes. Imagine what people can do in a tertiary field environment. Also, the sudden appearances of new races of humans, as well as evidence of past races of humans that no longer exist. Yeah, remember, guys, Cro-Magnon just suddenly appeared, but by the time they appeared in our world, they were already dying out. They are a post-cataclysm breed of people, and yet the Cro-Magnon was a sedentary race, very advanced. By the time we found all their skeletons, they were in the caves of the earth, and they were few in number, and they were being eaten by the surviving pockets of Neanderthal. Nothing makes sense at all in anthropology. So, more evidence is past field convergences carry with them many non-local connections between fields that we refer to as entanglement. This dynamic means that the closer these two fields are getting to one another, the information in both fields is becoming destabilized, as these non-local connections are preparing to merge and create a tertiary field. Pay attention to what I'm telling you. What this means in the world of perception is that people and events will begin to behave erratically. Those souls that are most aligned with their environment are those who will become the most destabilized during this transitional phase. Humans with weakened or damaged avatars will be most susceptible to tertiary field influence, meaning the most non-spiritual people during field convergence are weighed down by the phenomena of both the terrasphere and the Nemesis plane, and are subject to both mathematical constructs and the phenomenon and life forms of both. I don't even want to repeat that. You'll just have to listen to the video again. But I just gave you the business. This means that people living in the terrasphere, our world, or on the Nemesis plane, who are not slave to their avatars by understanding that they are actually souls moored to source, those are the ones positively affected by the tertiary field overlay and can freely move from Earth to Nemesis and back during the phase period. Remember, some of the laws that we live by in the terrasphere, Earth, are spiritual laws, and those spiritual laws are going to work in every field. It doesn't matter what the Nemesis field world is like, what that plane is like. But a soul that is moored to source, that looks within, will always be powerful no matter where it is located. But the soul that relies on the avatar as a vehicle to get through the world and believes that the avatar is affected by all external stimuli, the soul that lives a reactive life is the one that's going to be harmed the most by the tertiary field and everything that comes through it. So this is something we need to explore more of in the near future. Let me stop sharing my screen. Yeah, this is something we need to explore more in the future. This will be tertiary field dynamics, what it actually means. We're going to go deeper into what we know about Nemesis X, what we know about the Anuna. These are what we know about the Amuru, who came after the flood and appeared during the 60-year period of the Nemesis X object. But this was all necessary in order to get to the point of the video we're at now, because now we're going to have to look at a music video from 1985, knowing everything that you know now, what you just saw in the first 1 hour and 38 minutes. Oh, it just turned to 139. Imagine that. Knowing what you know now, seeing this presentation, seeing the MasterCard layout of the convergence field dynamics. Not trying to be more scientific than I am, guys. I'm just trying to figure it out. I'm trying to do the same thing you are. And I'm a chronologist, and I just know that the chronological systems of the ancient world all the way to today, we've got them mapped. But they don't make sense from a uniformitarian perspective. But they do make sense when we realize that the ancients were mapping something other than time. They were mapping convergences. So we need to look at this video, because I did a full breakdown. It may take an hour, but it's worth your time, because of what I just shown you. You're going to have some mind explosions in this breakdown of this video from 1985. Here we go. Let me find my video. And I might want to plug my phone up, which is about to die. All right, there we go. All right, let's see here. Terry, your mind isn't blown yet. Wait till we get into this video. So I asked my community on Twitter and in the Archaics community right here. I asked my community to watch a music video. It only lasts like 4 minutes. Watch this music video before you come to watch this video, or at least watch it after this video presentation is over. You're going to see screenshots of it, but it's important, because once you've listened to this presentation and go back and watch that video, it's a shut book case. The elite have always known. They've always known. And this is going to change exactly what's going on. All the stuff that's going on in media, all the cloak and dagger, all the psyops, every bit of it's going to make sense. Let's see here. I need to see what I got here. That's a share. That's a screen share. Let me get rid of this intro. So let's read. The very first thing we need to do is just read the lyrics. I'm going to show you the lyrics right here on the screen. Let's do that right now. Okay. This song is from 1985. In the jungle of the senses, Tinker Bell and Jack the Ripper, love has no meaning, not where they come from. But we know pleasure is not that simple. Very little fruit is forbidden. Sometimes we wobble, sometimes we're strong. But you know evil is an exact science, being carefully, correctly wrong. Then the chorus, which is the best part. Priests and cannibals, prehistoric animals, everybody's happy as the dead come home. Big black nemesis, Parthenogenesis, no one move a muscle as the dead come home. So the second stanza, we feel like Greeks, we feel like Romans, centaurs and monkeys just cluster around us. We drink elixirs that we refine, from the juices of the dying. We are not monsters, we're moral people, and yet we have the strength to do this. This is the splendor of our achievement. Call in the airstrike with a poison kiss. I'm telling you now, almost all of this is in code. So here's a double chorus. I'm just going to read the chorus one more time. Priests and cannibals, prehistoric animals. Everybody's happy as the dead come home. Big black nemesis, parthenogenesis. No one move a muscle as the dead come home. The third and final stanza. How bad it gets, you can't imagine. The burning wax, the breath of reptiles. God is not mocked. He knows his business. Karma could take us at any moment. Cover him up. I think we're finished. You know it's never been so exotic. But I don't know. My dreams are visions. But we could still end up with the great big fishes. And of course, there is the now it's a 3.1. I thought it was pretty clever how they did this. 3.1. It could be close to 3.14, but that's really hard to determine. But a 3.1 chorus, meaning the chorus is 3 times and then a fraction. Everybody's happy is the very last part, which is added to the three times the chorus is sung. So I'm wondering if he was going for pi 3.14. I don't know. This is the lyrics of Nemesis. The song is called Nemesis. The group is called Shriekback. The year is 1985, and I had never heard this song before until somebody shared it with me. But it's been a splinter in my mind as I work on other projects. I keep coming back to this song because I kept like, man, there's something to this. This it's more than just Nemesis. So yeah, I sleep on things. I wake up with the answers. So let's look at it. So we have some really interesting. It's just so weird. The very first image that you get to see in the music video are the scales of Nemesis. The title of the song is Nemesis. The symbol of ancient Nemesis, the goddess of balance and sometimes retribution, were the scales. They're right here. So, going through here real quick, you can see there's a shadow on the back wall. The shadow on the back wall is also called Nemesis. It's a character from a story. He's got deer antlers. He's just like a demon, But this is according to the writer of the song. The writer of the song, though, doesn't mention these scales. Here's a main singer in the jungle of the senses. Here's Tinkerbell and Jack the Ripper. Just really weird images. He's pulling leeches. These are leeches he's pulling up or something. I think they're leeches. I'm not really sure. So love has no meaning, not where they come from. I'm showing you right here. The lyrics are on the bottom. I'm just going to go through this pretty fast. We're going to go through it again with a different eye. These are just pictures of the music video. Just wanted to give you a feel. If you haven't watched the video yet, they're putting pictures with the lyrics. And as I will show, those pictures actually add a lot of detail. I also read exactly what he's saying about his deal. And I'm telling you now, all music writers do that. They're very vague. And half of what he says about this song is total BS. It's just total BS. There's the deer antlers Nemesis character. Kind of a weird looking dude. I'm almost done. So, I've got a lot more images than that. I just wanted to go through that one file real quick because now we're going to check this out. So, Archaics veterans, are you ready for this? This is the first stanza. In the jungle of the senses. What you see in blue is the actual lyrics to the song. If it's in white, oh, this is me. But I think you guys can see this enough. In the jungle of the senses, this is an experience, not a true reality. Use of jungle is figurative, like it's a jungle out there. Something very simple. In the very opening line in a song called Nemesis is literally telling us this is not a real world. It's a jungle of the senses. Oh, somebody's already singing Guns N' Roses. That's cool, Nick. Next is Tinker Bell and Jack the Ripper. Well, Tinker Bell is fantasy, and Jack the Ripper is violence. I should have put this in here, but the reference to Jack the Ripper is even deeper. Jack the Ripper is psyop. Most people don't know this. Jack the Ripper wasn't just a serial killer. There's a lot of evidence that Jack the Ripper was a doctor, a surgeon, somebody of great importance, and that he was moonlighting as a serial killer. Love has no meaning, not where they come from. A reference to those who came here from somewhere else, maybe another construct. But we know pleasure is not that simple. Very little fruit is forbidden. Pleasure is one of the senses of the jungle mentioned in verse 1. Though we are not here solely for pleasure, while we are here, little is forbidden us. Sometimes we wobble, sometimes we're strong. The clue is basically in the image of the astrolabe, because as I showed you just a minute ago, when you look at the actual pictures on the video, when it says this, they're showing an astrolabe. So when the sky shows we are on Sol's ecliptic, the world wobbles. But when it is on Nemesis ecliptic, it is strong. So Nemesis is named in the chorus. Remember, we're not making up anything about Nemesis. It's literally the name of the song. So, but there's a dual meaning. On present Sol ecliptic, humans are weak, but on Nemesis ecliptic, humans are strong. Also, but you know evil is an exact science, being carefully, correctly wrong. So everything our controllers tell us about science, religion, and history is carefully, correctly wrong. Now, if you think the interpretation of the first stanza is merely confirmation bias on my part, let's examine the actual chorus that now follows. Here's the chorus. First of all, here's the chorus. Priest and cannibals, prehistoric animals. Showing a skull here and a candle. These are ritual items. It also looks like it shows a Mason deal right here. I'm not sure. It kind of looks like a compass. Priest and cannibals, prehistoric animals. This guy's wearing a mask. Excuse me. Excuse me. Damn. Wow, third sneeze. So, again, priest and cannibals. These guys are wearing some really weird masks. There's masks on the totem poles. Here's a prehistoric animal. It's a prehistoric animal made by NASA because it's got this tinfoil on it. Some more. Here's like a snake skeleton. It's a main singer again. Some weird overlay. This is an overlay of the snake skeleton and the scales, Nemesis scales. Again, just a different vantage point. There's the scales and the monster. It's got some monstrous dinosaur type sounds in the background. There's another monster right there. Prehistoric animal. These guys are singing their ass off. wearing the really weird masks. This is all during the chorus. Every scene you see here is during the chorus. There's that monster again. This is this right here has two meanings. This kind of has two meanings. One, it's like summoning, come forth, come here. And another one, it's like veneration to a deity. Supplication. They're all doing it in the song. I'm not gonna lie, the weird looking dude, he sings his ass off. He does. He gets into it. He's out of all the singers, he's the one getting into it the most. Here's another monster head, kind of looks avian. They keep throwing that monster head in there. Now we have an ammonite, really unusual fossil ammonite. But look at the symbolism here. You have an upside down human head here, and an ammonite, which is nothing but what's the golden proportion? It is in physics, it's 1.618. It is the golden proportion spiral. Spirals are also portal symbols. Look, he's upside down, and the ammonite fossil is turning. But now look, another guy is at right angle to him. Here's two different humans. Here are two different planes converging. Nemesis, somewhere else. No one move a muscle as the dead come home. Jack-o'-lantern. What does a jack-o'-lantern symbolize? Halloween. Halloween is October 31st, but actually the ancient Day of the Dead was November 1st. I mean, Halloween is actually like the eve before the Day of the Dead. Again, they keep showing us this little scene here. It's pretty interesting. The heads merging and look at that. Two worlds colliding. Both of them are occupied. Everybody's happy when the dead come home. So, like I said, if you think the interpretation of the first stanza is merely confirmation bias on my part, let's examine the actual chorus that now follows. The stanzas are verses that tell us where we are located in a falsified jungle of the senses. But the chorus, though, that's the stanza. The chorus tells us where we are headed toward. Totally different. The first stanza tells us where we are. The chorus tells us where we're going. Priests and cannibals, prehistoric animals. Everybody's happy. The dead come home. Big black nemesis, parthenogenesis. No one move a muscle as the dead come home. So that's the chorus. Priests sacrifice the living. Cannibals eat the living. Prehistoric animals do not exist right now, but they are introduced into the near future, connected to big black nemesis, parthenogenesis. Remember, the song is titled Nemesis, so this is the focus. And also, parthenogenesis concerns creating new life forms from eggs, asexual reproduction where unfertilized eggs develop into new individual creatures, a trait of some insects, amphibians, reptiles, and avians, or prehistoric animals. Under the right conditions, parthenogenesis can populate a world rapidly with myriads of new fish, marine life, insects, avians, amphibians, and reptiles, all born from eggs that were never fertilized. Twice in the chorus, we have a reference to the dead. Everybody's happy as the dead come home. No one move a muscle as the dead come home. This is really interesting because Nemesis is attached to 2106 AD. And we know from many Archaics videos and my published books, 2106 AD, the return of the chief cornerstone, the fulfillment of the Great Pyramid, lithic prophecy, is about the exodus of souls from this construct going home. That's what it's about. And that's exactly what he's singing about right here. Everybody's happy as the dead come home. No one move a muscle as the dead come home. It's going to be really hard for some people to move who get trapped in the tertiary field. Remember, they're under the mathematical physics constants of both planes for a small period of time, at least during the ingress and the egress points. I don't know about the whole 60 years, but for some of the more powerful nodal points, a lot of people they're not going to have an ability to move, almost like probably like paralysis, a temporary paralysis. So this is a reference to a body of people either arriving with Nemesis or departing Earth and going home back to Nemesis. Both of them can equally be true, because when the Nemesis plane overlays the terrasphere, the tertiary field is going to be a confluence of phenomena and life forms. Life forms from Earth will be going into the Nemesis plane. Nemesis plane life forms will be coming to Earth. So to better see if the interpretations are holding true, let's examine the second stanza. We feel like Greeks. We feel like Romans. So the elite who deceived the public and employed deceitful science perfectly used the Roman Latin for their law courts controlling the masses. The Latin is the language of the medical field, in terms and phrases, as well as the names of everything in the deceitful sciences. They're all Latin. The elite play as Greeks in their balls, their fancies, and in their adherence to the Pythian and Olympiad calendars, as we have seen in the unfolding of the breaking of the seals. Centaurs and monkeys just cluster around us. This is how the elite regard the masses. Most are monkeys, but some are amazing and prove their worth and loyalty to become centaurs, which are still only half a man. We drink elixirs that we refine from the juices of the dying. This is a reference in 1985 to adrenochrome. Again, this identified not only the elite, but that Nemesis return is known to the elite. Also, this song, Nemesis by Shriekback in 1985, was banned in I think it was the UK. It was either banned in the UK or banned in Romania, or it was banned somewhere in Europe, because the writer of the song said that it was this statement right here. He literally said this. It's online. Anybody can Google it. But he literally said that song and the sales of that song was banned from one of the European countries because of that statement right there. We drink elixirs that we refine from the juices of the dying. It wasn't banned because that country was offended. It was banned because these music artists and these screen directors and these script writers in Hollywood, they're allowed to tell us these things in fantasy and in dressing. It's all parody and it's all code. But this statement here was too close to the truth in 1985. Too close. All right. We are not monsters. We're moral people. And yet we have the strength to do this. Now, the world is a very big place. So this is a curious statement that alludes to the fact that the elite are caught in a dichotomy. Hold on. Yeah, there we go. So the elite are caught in a dichotomy. Their rituals, their demonstrations of evil, totally obvious psyops, and media saturation of completely immoral and even ridiculous narratives is actually attached to a greater agenda involving the protection and preservation of humanity, but one that the elite cannot be caught doing. This is a theory that we have discussed in Archaics before. And I know it brings offense to many people. I know a lot of people are not willing to hear this. The public demonstrations are always just enough to persuade the gullible masses, but they always seem to have evidence that it's all smoke and mirrors. Every psyop that occurs, it doesn't take long before we actually know the truth, or at least we know that what happened isn't what was true, no matter how many other smoke trails are thrown out there. As if the elite are not actually they're just not actually putting on a show for the masses, but for something that is watching us. I'm going to repeat that. It's almost as if the elite, they're not even trying to put on a show for the masses. They're putting on a show for something else. And I believe it's the true meaning of the eye over the pyramid. With the pyramid blocks being the souls of humanity, the eye becomes an overseer, an overlord, an oppressive force that watches everything. So the statement, and yet we have the strength to do this, completely links the activity of evil and control over the monkeys and centaurs with the idea that they are engaging in activity or deception they do not really want to do. And it requires strength on their part. And for this reason, they say, this is the splendor of our achievement. So imagine a scenario. Listen, you don't have to agree with me, but imagine a scenario where these people get up there like Candace Owens. These people get up there like Trump. These people get way up there. Okay, like Tim Pool recently. What's the child catcher who played the child catcher in the 2012 Olympics? I always forget that dude's name. Brandon something. What the hell's that dude's name? Him too. So all these people that make it super popular to where, you know, they have a mega voice and they're taken in. Imagine a scenario where they're taken in. When they're taken in, they are shown things no one in the world gets to see. They're shown things. They're shown documents. They're shown video. People come in and talk to them and tell them, man, people they even know or heard of or looked up to, they come in and tell them. And it's so mind-numbing that when they're actually told the truth about our reality, our world, what's really going on, why the psyops are necessary, what the hell is actually happening here, and it's completely so alien to anything that they ever expected to hear. Just imagine that's going on, because this is what he's literally conveying here. I'm not saying it's true. I'm just saying it's plausible. It's plausible. There's no way in hell that our controllers are unleashing all these psyops so stupidly and was so in such juvenile ways and passing all these really ridiculous laws. And this is not a coordinated effect to do something. And it might be doing something completely different than any of you think. So remember, we got to get out of that uniformitarian shit. We got the whole world that science has built for us is absolutely false. So the last verse in the second stanza is a chrono marker. Nemesis has already been introduced now in the chorus, and it is the name of the song itself. So the last thing it says is, call in the airstrike with a poison kiss. So because of what is mentioned in the third and final stanza, which we haven't got to yet, this is obviously a reference to the return of the Nemesis X object in 2046. The airstrike is the Nemesis X object that brings the poison kiss mentioned as wormwood in the trumpet judgments just after the seals are broken. Nemesis X even looks like a missile. Remember, I showed you what was carved into Stonehenge, and I showed you the woodcut from 1561 over Nuremberg. They are identical. This is the Nemesis X object. So now the chorus is sung twice before the third stanza begins. And just for shits and giggles, we've been through two stanzas. So we'll look back. So this is repeated twice now. Precinct cannibals, prehistoric animals. Everybody's happy as the dead come home. Big black nemesis, Parthenogenesis. No one move a muscle as the dead come home. So here's the third chorus. How bad it gets, you can't imagine. This is a direct reference to the trumpet judgments, which are said to be worse than the seals. Nostradamus also mentioned the second destruction to be worse than the first. And these are dated 2040 and 2046. Need some water. The burning wax, the breath of reptiles. So there is only one way to close an ancient scroll, especially like those contained in the Apocalypse, with burning wax. And once the wax seals are broken, the Phoenix in 2040 brings a vapor canopy wherein grow amphibians, avians, and reptiles to dinosaur sizes. The breath of reptiles. If you're new to my channel, you don't know what we're talking about. We have many videos that explain how the vapor canopy is returning in May 2040. The breath of reptiles. God is not mocked. He knows his business. Karma could take us at any moment. We again get confronted with the idea that things are not what they seem with the elite. This is a reference to God reverently. Cover him up. I think we're finished. So it is finished is a reference to the book of Revelation when God's plan has been completed. Revelation 21:6 and Revelation 16:17. It is also a reference to the death of Jesus. When Jesus had received the sour wine, he said, "It is finished." And he bowed his head and he gave up his spirit. Again, we have a reference to death. What was the message of Jesus? Eternal life, or life after death. Also, cover him up because it is finished would mean protect the secret, because revelation to the masses is no longer needed. Apocalypse means to remove the covering, but the unveiling is no longer required once the dead come home. You know, it's never been so exotic, but I don't know. My dreams are visions. Here is an admission that things are the exact opposite than what we think. It is so exotic that we experience unreal phenomena, dreams, which are products of imagination that we don't realize are actually visions of things that are real. We could still end up with the great big fishes. This is the final verse in the song of the stanzas and is a penetrating insight into what this song is actually conveying. That there is a change that humanity that there is a chance that humanity could still end up with the great big fishes, a flood catastrophe, can only mean that the activity of the elite are engaged in has something to do with offsetting some kind of karmic debt and maintaining a balance, which is the very symbol of Nemesis. Maintaining this balance until arrival of Nemesis has everything to do with the dead going home. Excuse me. All right, so lyrics breakdown stanzas. I'm going to find real quick. There's so many crazy things in this. So it's not there. And it's not there. All right. I need to find when the dead come home. So the video starts with Nemesis scales and some type of monster and dinosaur sounds in the background. This is the scales of Nemesis. The writer of the song even admits that this is a reference to the goddess Nemesis, and the goddess Nemesis is represented by the deer antlered warrior that comes from a comic book. I can't remember what the comic book was, but he talks about it. And but still, he still mentions the goddess Nemesis in his breakdown of his own video. Jungle of the Senses, pulling out the leeches, which could be a vapor canopy reference. If you notice when he talks about love has no meaning, not where they come from, but in the back he's showing an angel and a cross. That's in the background. It's all kinds of little interesting details here. There it is again. But we know pleasure is not that simple. There's a cross in the background. Here he is. Here he is, basically being probably one of the occupants of Nemesis, looking down on humanity as a monkey. Sometimes we wobble, sometimes we're strong. That is a planisphere. That's an astrolabe right there. So this is interesting because we have St. Jerome in the middle. We have St. Jerome in the middle, the sun on the left, and the sun is over a holy guy. St. Jerome, though, is picking evil. He puts his hand on the evil book. There is a monster and a phoenix right here that he's putting his hand on. Oh, it's not a book, it's a phoenix. He's got his hand on the phoenix, and the phoenix is in front of the monster, and it's under the moon. And these are scrolls, like apocalyptic scrolls. This is a parchment of St. Jerome. What's interesting about it is once the guy picks the evil, there's ink or blood begins taking over the deal. And in his own description of his song, he said that image was showing that the guy willfully chose the dark side, and that's why the ink was covering up the good guy on the right of St. Jerome. Here it is, being carefully, correctly wrong. There's a cross in the background. And there's, we feel like Greeks, we feel like Romans. There's a pillar, little capital on it. Again, Greeks and Romans. It's what the elite play by. It's part of their playbook, the Olympiads and the Pythian calendar. Here is humanity as a captive. There's captive, basically captive to the elite. Here is a monkey with a cord around its neck, right next to a big old fruit bowl. The elite have everything they want. drinking elixirs that we refine from the juices of the dying. Shows this dude drinking, shows this old man. Okay, the watermelon here is representative of the flesh. It is red. The juices are blood. This is from the juices of the dying. We are not monsters. We are moral people. And yet we have the strength to do this. Showing kids here. Now, is it showing as are they protecting them, or are they using them for something else? Because this guy right after that is drinking. Calling an airstrike with a poison kiss. That's wormwood. Now, here's what's really interesting. Do you see the setup? You see that tree? Tree's got faces on it. Here's the lead singer sitting on this chair like throne. This guy here is studying like an image, studying something, like a doll or something. I don't know, but he's not doing anything. How bad it gets, you can't imagine. But the scene shifts. There's the little tree with all the faces, and a tree of masks. Here's the guy. He's got weird faces, man. Burning wax, the breath of reptiles. This is where it gets weird. God is not mocked. He knows his business. There's the symbol of Nemesis again. There's the warrior he's calling Nemesis, although he does mention the goddess in his breakdown of his own video. Painting a symbol. I think that's supposed to be blood or ink. All right. Cover him up about the apocalypse. Here's where it gets weird. Here's that tree again with the heads on the end. I don't know whether he's got a feather in his hand. I don't know what that means, the ring. But this is where it gets weird. Here's the stage. Here's all this is set up. There's the monkey down there. There's a picture frame showing it's a scene. It's scenery. Now look, the exact same thing is a model. This is the model. That's the stage. The stage shows the picture, meaning this is all just a scene. Yet here's the scene as a model. Here it is right here. Dude's sitting there in front of the picture. There he is sitting on the chair. There's the tree in the background. The world is a stage. There it is again. There's big black Nemesis, the whole background. And that was the stanzas. And now the chorus. I just showed this earlier. Priesting cannibals, prehistoric animals. Let's go through it real fast. Prehistoric animals. There's the two planes colliding. Both of them are inhabited. There's a reference to the Day of the Dead. Remember, I've showed you in Archaics, Nemesis X only appears in November 1st, November 2nd. Ancient Day of the Dead. Symbol of Nemesis right there. Now, if you don't think that the poem has anything to do with like the apocalypse, he actually says in the breakdown of his own video that his song was inspired by Apocalypse Now. He literally says this in his own interpretation of the verses in the stanzas when he was writing the song. He literally says that he was heavily influenced to write the song by what he saw in Apocalypse Now. So, and Apocalypse Now is based off a novel by Conrad called The Heart of Darkness. He says it was a thought experiment and all that. You know, I'm not trying to hear all that stuff. They have a real good excuses for why they write what they write. But anybody who's going to be revealing things, to the public, through music and all that, they're not going to. They are not, absolutely not going to tell you all the details. Just like he didn't. He didn't tell you all the details. So I'm looking for one more thing. So as you can see, we have a lot to discuss when it comes to tertiary field dynamics. This is a whole new direction we're going to be taking Archaics into now that we have completely abandoned the uniformitarian model of history, the uniformitarian model of relative dating methods, which are all wrong. The uniformitarian model, Ice Age model, all that stuff is in error. Every bit of it. We are not dealing with worlds. We're dealing with realms, and realms are fields, and apparently they can overlap. And when they do, there's an exchange of materials, and what we get is something like what we saw right here. We can't make this stuff up. This is the Dark Ages. What did I just show you about the Dark Ages? While we have almost no literary records from the Dark Age period, what we do have is archaeology that shows us that plesiosaurs were in almost every single lake in Scotland, Wales, Cornwall, Ireland. They're everywhere. Plesiosaurs were everywhere. They were documented, not just Loch Ness, not just Nessie. They were all over Britain in the basically the whole Emerald Isles in Britain in the Dark Age and the Middle Age period. And the early church was worried about giant snails and flying creatures and giant lizards like George and the Dragon. It was a totally different world. Why was it a totally different world? Why is it so unbelievable to everybody? It's because they've fallen for the uniformitarian model. But under tertiary field dynamics, we see real easily that in 522 AD, both Phoenix, which is its own field, and Nemesis, which is its own field, which is occupied, both came in 522, and it's the only time in history they ever did it, and it was the Dark Ages. And look at the gamma ray activity recorded by physicist LaViolette right here, only during the Dark Ages. And after this period was over, in the early Middle Ages, we had all kinds of paintings of brontosauruses, and we had Native American artifacts of bowls and spoons and utensils and totem poles that showed prehistoric creatures. Why? Because they were here. Because we were eating them. Because we were domesticating them. We have 35,000 figurines of Acambaro, Mexico that shows anatomically correct dinosaur-type creatures. They're just amphibians. They're just reptiles. But they're there. Triceratops and Stegosaurus. They're real. But they live on Nemesis. They don't live on Earth. They were only here because they got left behind in the tertiary field. Just like the human populations that disappeared in the Dark Ages. That's why we haven't found a whole bunch of human skeletons, but we got all these cities. Because those humans, they went bye-bye. That's what the tertiary field dynamics is. It is an exchange, an ingress and an egress point, and the chronology is absolutely verifiable all throughout the Archaics published books and videos. It's those 60-year windows where all the magic happens. Whole worlds collide. Like Immanuel Velikovsky said, worlds in collision. The only reason he didn't get all the way where we're at right now is because he was still slave to that uniformitarian model. This is the new direction of Archaics. I hope you enjoy it. That's my presentation. That's my presentation. This was brought to you by MasterCard. The Nemesis card. Yeah. Oh, not of this world. Thank you. And everybody else who donated. I appreciate it. I just haven't been able to pay attention to my chat. But that's my presentation. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I certainly enjoyed putting this together. And it's been a series of mind explosions. If you will please go back and listen to that video. Or shriek back. Listen to that song with everything that I just shared with you, And then the last 3 videos I did on Dark Ages are all going to absolutely make sense now. Now we see why it's all plausible. Now we understand why all these prehistoric creatures and humans were all living together, and we have all these artifacts that show this, even though it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense because of our education, but it absolutely makes sense. The Dark Ages, everything makes sense once you understand that there was a 60-year window up to 522 AD when a tremendous amount of life forms left our world and went somewhere else, and life forms populated our world from somewhere else. And during this period was also a Phoenix phenomenon deal, which deposits red earth, red mud, and red rain all over the world, and also introduces little edits. And Nemesis also brought Parthenogenesis, which is literally raining all the little eggs and all the little everything that's needed for whole ecosystems of life forms to just pop up in weeks. It's crazy. This whole thing's just so crazy. Oh, I'm still sharing my screen on the whole thing's just so crazy. But we are making quantum leaps in our understanding of the world we're in. And I just want you to take in consideration, you just need to take in consideration that what you're seeing unfold on the world scene may not be at all what's really happening. And that when they do these psyops and do all this stuff, if you notice, they do not care what you believe. They don't. Something else is going on here. Everything revolves around the knowledge of the Phoenix in 2040 in the month of May, and in November, the return of the Nemesis X object. We have to process all information unfolding in the world right now through the lens of these 2 epic events. That's what we need to do. Like I said, my presentation's over. I need to go. I'm already rambling. But the takeaway here, the greatest takeaway for you, is that the tertiary field and the contact with the Phoenix phenomenon field and the Nemesis X field is never going to affect the immortal within. It's not. It's not. We've got other Archaics videos that theorize about why the media is always trying to get us to vibrate in this negative base plateau. Yeah, it makes sense. It makes absolute sense. If the masses, if the collective bear the brunt of the tertiary field phenomena, that means the rest of us are free. Something to process, guys. Something to process. For years, I've been telling you the Phoenix phenomenon is not what you think. It does sound terrible. Yes, the phenomenon that's been recorded in the historical record is terrible, but we've unleashed all this 1902 data as well. Now you understand. Now you have a mechanism to understand how it was possible that all these things just suddenly appeared in the world in 1902. Now you got it. During 1902, we were in a tertiary field. No doubt. Exchange of information. Love you guys. But I'm about to check out. Because before I go to sleep, I probably have me a shot or 2 of some wild turkey, because I think I earned it. And I'm going to read a chapter or 2 of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Peace out.